But let me also bring one more point to this selection part. So when you have given all these are only your screening criterias, right? Let's also now look at your evaluation criteria. Now, I remember, I think the last time we met was somewhere 8 years back.
Right.
When we met, and we had discussion around checklists and forensics, and we had a lot of discussion around those points, and we discussed a lot of things which were there on your checklist, and it was a huge list, if I remember correctly. From I think 18-20 points on your, even just the psychological checklist had around 18-20 points. The behavioral checklist, and then a lot of business checklists. You passingly mentioned that that was an overkill, right? So can you take us through the evolution of what used to be on your checklist, and what parts you realized that were overkill, and which you realized were actually a good points to keep, and you still keep them, or you don't keep them at all, whatever your current process is in terms of evaluation?
The way the checklist got built is that I started, and this is an era where you would not get as much data, so you have to painstakingly pull an annual report, read through it, and then I would put those numbers into a spreadsheet. And then every time I would read a book or I would come across some concept or something, I would plug it into that spreadsheet. And then I started this, let's say in early 2000. Over the next 15 years, it just kept growing and growing, and different tabs. And I know a few friends who make fun of this spreadsheet, saying you have this 60 tab Excel. So it just kept growing. What kind of took me to a point where I thought it was an overkill is because after I had done all this work, and then I still realized that the success. So again, I'm a very meticulous record keeper of my own investments, what is working, what is not working, what is the success rate, what is the failure rate. When I correlated, I looked at the ideas which had failed, and then I looked at my process. I realized that doing all of this had not improved the success rate. So that was the first trigger, right? That this is not. So the second thing which I then came to is, okay, what are the parts which do I really need to go through all of them? Now there are certain. If I break down the spreadsheet, it was more, let's say, taking down all the quantitative numbers. That was one aspect of it. Second is, let's say, the behavioral aspects. The third is the business model, and fourth would be the DCF, and fifth, let's say, would be the accounting piece of it. So the first thing which went out of the window was the valuation piece. Now I would do this whole elaborate spreadsheet about DCF and this multiple and that multiple and all that. I just threw it out because it was not adding value. You can put whatever numbers you want and you can make it all work out. So I kind of threw that away right away and start thinking in terms of more like ranges and probabilities. Instead of agonizing over 30 times P and 28 times P, just look at ranges and see where it is. So that part went out right away. The second part, which I kind of think through it, but I would not sit and type into it, is the behavioral piece. No matter how many times I wrote it down, when the time came, it's very tough, just to look at that checklist and behave in a different manner. So took some of that behavioral stuff out. What I have added more is around the management piece, which is more around that it has now become a negative checklist. Are there any red flags which I should be looking at? And I will check it against those red flags. So those have not gone away. What I've emphasized further is how well is the management executing. So that's the other thing which I realized over time, that the difference, once you get the basic idea of the business, the industry, fine, it all comes down to how the management is executing. And the way to the best way to do that is to look at what have they pull out the last 8 to 10 years of annual report, look at what they have said and what they have finally followed through. So that part I continue to do it. I would look at what they had, let's say, committed in 2008 or 2010 or 12, and then follow through. The process has been, I still use it. I don't meticulously update every tab and everything. It's more kind of just quickly run through it. And again, it comes to the same point, that if you're going to spend so much time on this spreadsheet, is the ROI on that time good enough? So there are aspects to it. Some aspects I've just dropped it. And again, some of it becomes second nature also. So you don't have to keep typing all of that again and again into it.
Sure.
But end of the day, where I've tried to come down to is that in a buying process, how quickly can I zone into the key variables of that business? And if I'm, let's say, looking at a bank, instead of updating 20 tabs, the first thing I'm going to look at is, what is their cost of fund? Are they able to keep a low cost of fund in their operations? Second is, how do they think about risk management and growth? Is this a management which is crazy about top line growth? Because if they are, today or tomorrow they will blow the institution up. Because if you try to push beyond a limit, no matter what, you'll do crazy lending and you'll blow it up. And third is obviously around their credit underwriting and everything. So if I can zero down those 3 or 4 variables, then I can drill down instead of wasting my time on all kinds of peripheral issues which may not be important for that business. So that's how it has kind of evolved. Try to get down to the crux of that particular idea more than.
What you're essentially saying is your checklist is now much more prioritized. Instead of giving weightage to all the points.
Correct.
You are now looking at few 5, 6 major checklist points which are very important.
How quickly
for you.
Can I come to those?
Yeah, and I think those will also have some variations vis-a-vis the business model and vis-a-vis the kind of companies you're looking at.
Right.
I mean, I can fully relate to that whole process of, with years, your checklist becomes, I think I have told this to many people, that the difference between a novice investor and a experienced investor is that for novice investor, all the checklist points are equal. It's not a question of number of points. I think everybody can now get a hold of 100 checklist points to have. It's just a matter of you learn to prioritize pertaining to that particular company and business. Okay. So,
Puneet, how big is your checklist?
You have seen my checklist, dude. You remember, right?
Yeah, this is the reason I'm asking.
Yeah. So, I mean, my spreadsheets are equally big, very, very big number. But then my working is very. My reason for having that is that I have decided to convert a lot of qualitative questions which people generally have and try to see more of those coming from the numbers themselves. I mean, so like Rohit, you mentioned, right? I want to see the execution of the management. So I try to build elaborate models around capital allocations using the cash flow statement and try to get a lot of answers from there only. So those analytical sheets are more.
How do you do that?
Yeah. So how do I do it is
like an example, like when you said, right?
Yeah. So eventually every cash flow line item can be categorized. I mean, it's ultimately a source of fund or an application of fund not from accrual based, but a complete cash basis.
Right.
Yeah. So when you do that, you differentiate between one line item as either source or application because it is negative. If it's negative, it is going to be a source, and otherwise an application. Vice versa. So when you do that, you are able to bifurcate the sources and application year on year and on cumulative basis. So what I do is, so one line item can act as a source or as an application depending on your time frame. Right. So in many cases, equity can become a source, but if you have given more dividends than what you have raised, it will become more like an application of fund kind of a model. So I divide those, and I can share that with you offline also. And I see it over time, over multiple time frames. So I will see 3 years, 3 years, 3 years, 3 years. Then I will see 6 years and 6 years together. Then I will see over the 12 years journey and individual journeys also. And there is a model which is helping me do that. So earlier it was more towards, the same analytical stuff was less, too much of checklist points. But now my spreadsheets have evolved more towards analytical points. But this podcast is not about me. So Manish, I will stop now. It's more about Rohit's process. So let's stick to that.
No, it's great to, I mean, I would also, anyway, I think we should connect and we should talk about it because one of my, I would not say obsessions, but one of my areas of focus is how do you, and I keep bringing this, how do you improve amount of time which you spend? There is obviously a certain minimum amount of time which you have to spend to analyze an idea, but how do you kind of, I think in an era where we have the likes of Mr. Manish and others who have automated systems, right? And these automated systems do extremely well, and they require much less amount of time. We have to adapt to that. You can you can take a very artisanal approach of analyzing every annual report, but then you have to concentrate more, because obviously you're going to only look at a handful of companies, and then I'm very uncomfortable with being over concentrated. So with time being a limit, how do you bring all these, automated and quantitative? So that's why I was more interested. Maybe we should talk later.
The more you try to bring it from numbers, now it gives it's that prioritization becomes very easier when you focus it on those things. So all the key qualitative questions, be it around pricing, be it around seasonality of the business, cyclicality of the business, most of those now I answer using my analytical models. So that is a shift I have made from when we met last, and in that last 8-10 odd years, that has been my shift. But again, not about me today. We'll focus on your process. We'll get in touch again later. Maybe.
That. Yep. We should.
Sure.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.